Reach up and touch the top of your ear. Follow the rim down to the lobe, then find the small bump right in front of the canal. If you feel a tiny pinhole there, you're 1 in 1,000. That hole is a 200,000-year-old biological legacy code from a time your ancestors lived entirely tied to the water. Your body started building a gill, then switched to air breathing, but forgot to delete the file. Today we are decoding the 8 specific ear archetypes to reveal the hidden evolutionary advantages your DNA still carries today. Starting with oval, the diplomatic receiver. Most people look at the oval ear and assume common means unremarkable, right? It's the most frequent shape on the planet. Longer than it is wide, rounded contour, no hard angles, and most people stop there. But that's incorrect because the oval ear isn't average, it's universal, and those are completely different things. Every other ear shape on this list was optimized for one environment, one threat, one specific survival problem. The oval was built to function across all of them simultaneously. Think of your ear like a high-end studio microphone. While others are tuned to one specific frequency, you're hearing the entire mix. You're the person who senses the vibe of a room before a single word is even spoken. Picture it. A stranger walks into camp. Weapons come up. Voices rise. Your ancestor doesn't move. They listen. They catch the hesitation in a voice before the words finish. They read the frequency shift of someone trying to sound calm while lying. The alliance holds. The camp survives winter because one person in it heard what the situation actually was. That same trait didn't stay in the ears. It became a psychology. The ability to walk into a room and absorb every signal at once, not as noise, but as data, to catch what's not being said before the conversation confirms it. That is your diplomatic receiver at work. You feel it as one thing, receptivity. The read before the room shows its hand. But some environments rewarded whoever heard the threat first, before it was visible, before it was loud, before anyone else had any information at all. That's where the next shape was built. Rectangular, the deep frequency sentinel. The camp is asleep. Your ancestor isn't. Something shifted in the forest floor 30 seconds ago. Not a sound anyone registered. A vibration traveling through the ground before the footsteps became audible. They wake the group. The threat never closes the gap. That wasn't intuition. That was the sentinel running its protocol. So if you've been told your ears are longer than average, you may be carrying the sentinel architecture. And what it detects isn't more of the obvious signal. It's a completely different frequency band. Think of it like a bass guitar string versus a violin string. The longer string doesn't play the same note louder. It plays a lower note, a different frequency entirely. The taller auricle works the same way. It intercepts a longer column of air. Longer air columns actually carry frequencies below 1,500 Hz. And that band, the low end, is where the information arrives before the threat becomes visible. Your ancestors weren't hearing more of what everyone else heard. They were hearing what no one else was picking up. You feel this today as chronic vigilance. It's that background scan that runs in your mind even when you're safe. You're the person who knows the vibe of a room has changed before anyone has even spoken. You don't just hear more. You hear what everyone else is missing. The sentinel detected what was coming from a distance. But some environments didn't give you distance. The threat was already moving, fast. And the ear built to survive that scenario wasn't designed for range. It was designed for direction. That's where the next archetype comes in. Triangular, the kinetic radar. Think of a funnel, wide end toward the source. Narrow end focuses the flow. The triangular ear runs that exact logic. Wider at the top means more surface area intercepting incoming sound from directly ahead, from whatever you're already facing, from what's coming at you. When scientists looked at the skull shapes of ancient hunters, they found that front-facing directional sensitivity correlates with pursuit hunting adaptations. Your ancestors weren't just waiting for threats to arrive. They were moving toward prey. And in that context, what mattered wasn't the widest range. In psychology, this is called anticipatory processing. But you probably just know it as your brain constantly being 3 steps ahead of everyone else. If you're already mapping the next development before the current situation resolves, you're on this archetype. You feel it as one thing. Pursuit, the forward bias that makes waiting harder than moving. Your ancestors were the point of the spear. Your ear is still just broadcasting that. But pursuit hunting only works in one kind of environment. Move that same ancestor into a world where the threat wasn't prey, to where the environment itself was trying to kill you, and the survival calculus changes completely. But before we continue with the next shape, let's try something together. Try to wiggle just your ears. No hands. If you tried it and you can't, that's because most people can't. Here's why that matters more than it seems. The Auricularis muscles, 3 muscle groups attached to the outer ear, serve no purpose. But in most other mammals, they're the primary acoustic targeting system. A cat rotates its ears 180 degrees independently. It doesn't just hear a sound. It aims at it. You still have those muscles. They're still attached. Evolution just stopped investing in them when your ancestors developed language. You didn't need to turn your ear toward the threat when you could just warn the group. But here's the part that's genuinely strange. A study published in Frontiers in Neuroscience found that when humans consciously focus on a sound source, those muscles still fire. Try it now, and you'll see. Your conscious mind cannot wiggle your ears on command, but your brain is still trying to aim them when you concentrate. That reflex is 65 million years old, and it's still running right now. Drop which archetype you have so far in the comments. We still have 5 left, and the rarest one is still coming. Round, the compact acoustic. If you have this ear shape, your ancestors were moving through frozen steppes and glacial terrain, but their ears were engineered to stay functional in conditions that would have shut down a more elaborate structure. And that's why the assumption around round ear is false. Most people look at the round ear and assume compact means less capable, smaller hearing range. That assumption misses the entire point of what the ear shape was built to survive. This ear is basically a biological space heater. The cartilage of the ear, the structural tissue of the outer ear, has almost no insulating capacity, no fat layer, no internal circulation. In sub-zero environments, it freezes, and a frozen outer ear doesn't just hurt. It changes shape, and a changed shape means a degraded way the sound bounces. This ear is a biological fortress. It's built to stay online in temperatures that would literally freeze the tissue off a different shape. Your ancestors didn't have the luxury of coming inside. They survived the tundra because their ears were designed to never quit. It's a design built not for what it can gain, but for what it can't afford to lose. You may feel it as endurance, the quiet capacity to keep functioning when every external condition says stop. But while some ancestors were hiding from the cold, others were doing the opposite. They were turning their ears into high-definition radar dishes. Protruding. The Vigilant Paraboid. Hollywood told Clark Gable his ears were going to end his career before it started. Too prominent. Too distracting. MGM executives said no audience would take him seriously. But Clark Gable became the most commercially dominant film star of the 1930s, across 67 films. Famous for an almost uncanny ability to read a scene, a room, and an audience before they knew what they wanted. The ears weren't the liability. They were part of the instrument. Most people who have protruding ears have been told the same thing in different language. That they stick out. That they're too much. That's the wrong frame entirely. The standard angle between the auricle and the skull runs 20 to 30 degrees. If yours sits noticeably beyond that, you don't have a cosmetic issue. You have a biological amplifier. Here's the physics. Cup both hands behind your ears. Right now, hold them out. Everything got louder. Your internal anatomy didn't change. Your collection geometry did. That's the entire mechanism. And the protruding ear does that permanently, passively. On every sound in the environment, you've probably been told your ears stick out. The truth? You have built-in signal boosters. You aren't just hearing more sound, you're hearing the whispers of the environment that everyone else is literally deaf to. Your ancestors didn't hear the threat when it arrived. They heard it while it was still deciding whether to move. Charles Darwin documented this structural variation specifically in his work on human biological variety. During World War I, military acoustic engineers designing forward listening posts on the Western Front landed on an optimal collection geometry that closely mirrors the protruding ear profile. Your biology solved that engineering problem thousands of years before anyone put it on a blueprint. You may feel it as awareness, the sense of always having slightly more environmental data than the situation seems to require. That's not anxiety. It's the paraboloid running its original job. But hearing the threat early only matters if you have a group worth protecting, and some bloodlines weren't built on awareness. They were built on something deeper, commitment to the lineage itself. Attached lobe, the founder's seal. If you've been ignoring the earlobe, think again because you see the lobe has 2 variants. Free-hanging, where the lower portion separates from the side of the face and hangs freely, or attached, where it fuses directly to the face with no separation at all. So if your lobe connects seamlessly, no hanging section, no visible gap, you carry what population geneticists have directly linked to one of the most significant events in evolutionary history, the founder effect. Here's what that actually is. When a small group separates from a larger population and settles new territory, their gene pool compresses. Traits that in a large diverse population stay statistically minor become dominant across every generation that follows, permanently. So the attached lobe variant shows unusually high prevalence in populations with documented founder effect histories. Pacific Island groups whose ancestors launched into open ocean with small crews and never turned back, isolated mountain communities. Ancient settlement populations that moved into new territory and stayed. That's not random. That's selection, in real time. Research published in the American Journal of Human Genetics has consistently identified attached lobe prevalence as a marker of a genetic bottleneck, those rare moments in history where a tiny group of survivors became the blueprint for millions of people today. Your lobe pattern is a record of that moment. Your ancestors found the right environment, committed to it, built culture around it, and that decision is still encoded in your biology. You may feel it as loyalty, the drive to protect the network over individual advancement, to hold the line. ELF, or Stahl's ear, the 1% apex signal. If you have a distinct ridge or sharp point at the top of your outer helix, most people in your life have probably noticed it and said something. Maybe they called it unusual. Maybe they said it looks like an elf ear. Maybe they treated it like a quirk. It isn't a quirk. It's a retained upgrade. Stahl's ear occurs when an additional fold of cartilage develops across the scapha, creating a distinct ridge and a pointed upper helix. It appears in roughly 1% of the population. In the world of biology, this is a retained upgrade. Most humans lost it, but your ancestors kept it because, for them, hearing where a sound came from, above, behind, or below, was the difference between life and death. Here's what that means. You see, most mammals have a scaphofold, which is an additional cartilage ridge that gives the ear three-dimensional acoustic resolution. Not just horizontal, not just forward, overhead, behind, the full sphere simultaneously. In humans, this fold disappeared almost entirely. The evolutionary pressure to maintain it dropped when upright posture changed the threat landscape and language replaced directional hearing as the primary survival tool. But in 1% of the population, it didn't disappear. Evolutionary biologists propose this isn't a random anomaly. It's a retained trait in lineages where high-definition directional hearing continued to provide survival advantage long after most populations deprioritized it. This is the Hesperopithecus signal, the 3D audio for the real world. While the rest of us hear in stereo, you're hearing in surround sound. Your ancestors kept this upgrade because they needed to know if a threat was 20 feet behind them or 40 feet above them. That means your biology kept running an upgrade while the rest of the species returned. You may feel it as one thing: precision, sensitivity to the full environment, not just what's obvious, but what's happening in every direction at once. You're not in the 1% by choice. You're there by architecture, but the 1% is rare by definition. The next shape is rare for a completely different reason, because the environment that built it was rare too. Folded, the acoustic shelter. The folded ear occurs when the outer rim of the cartilage folds over or inward rather than curling outward. Here's what it was built against. Cartilage has no fat layer, no internal circulation. It takes the full force of whatever environment surrounds it. Think of high-speed desert winds filled with sand. It acts like sandpaper on human tissue. While other ears would literally erode or warp, your ancestors' folded design acted like a shield. A damaged outer ear doesn't just look different. It functions differently, and that, in an environment where sound was survival, was a death sentence. Your ancestor is moving through the high desert. Particulate wind has been stripping exposed surfaces for 3 days. Other ears in the group are already showing cartilage stress. Your ancestor's helix is folded. The wind hits the overhang first. The inner structure holds. The hearing stays sharp. The hunt on day 4 works because the instrument survived. That's your engineering. You feel it as one thing: durability. The drive to protect the instrument first and perform with whatever's left. Every shape you carry is the result of specific ancestors solving specific problems with no second attempts. And whatever combination you're running right now, you have one irreversible proof that their solutions worked. You exist. What's your combination? Drop your ear type in the comments. And if you have the pinhole, let me know in the comments. I want to see how many of you are carrying the deepest archive on this list. See you in the next video.